"You charged me wrong," the billionaire muttered, without glancing up as he slid the receipt back across the counter. The waitress wiped her hands on her apron and studied the slip of paper. Her brow furrowed as she ran her finger down the numbers. Then she looked at him directly, her voice calm but firm. "Sir, this isn't wrong. It's worse than that. You've been paying double every night for weeks." The billionaire froze, his pen still between his fingers. He finally looked at her eyes, narrowing, as if testing if she dared tell the truth in front of him. She held his gaze, unflinching. "I don't know if it was a system error or someone clever enough to think you'd never notice, but I saw it and I couldn't ignore it." The room fell quiet. A few staff members exchanging nervous glances. Nobody corrected a billionaire. Nobody risked making him feel fooled. But she did. She laid the stack of receipts neatly in front of him, pointing at the repeating pattern. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. "Someone was stealing from you right under your nose." The billionaire's jaw clenched as he scanned the papers. His face drained of color when he realized she was right. His empire had nearly been bled by a scheme hidden in plain sight. And the only person to catch it was the young woman in an apron who had nothing to gain by speaking up. Slowly, he leaned back in his chair, studying her like a puzzle he had never seen before. Why would you risk saying this? Why not stay quiet and let it go? Her answer was simple and sharp, because the truth is worth more than a tip. The billionaire's fingers tightened on the receipts, his knuckles pale, as he read the pattern again and again. He wasn't a man easily rattled, but tonight his silence was louder than any shout. Finally he lifted his eyes to her, his voice low. "You realize exposing this could cost you your job?" She crossed her arms, steadying her breath. "Maybe, but keeping quiet would cost me more. My conscience." A murmur rippled. Through the staff hovering near the kitchen door, no one ever spoke back to him, not the managers, not even his closest advisors. Yet this waitress did without stuttering. The billionaire leaned forward, elbows on the table, studying her as if she were a mirror he wasn't ready to face. "You're either foolish or fearless," he said. "Which one is it?" She answered without hesitation. "Maybe both, but at least I'll sleep at night." He blinked, his chest rising heavier than before. In that moment, the weight of her words struck deeper than the numbers on the page. If she hadn't spoken, he would have lost millions before realizing it, and worse, the betrayal would have stayed hidden. She had exposed it with nothing more than honesty. He tapped the table. Slowly, once, twice, the sound sharp in the silence. "You saved me from more than theft tonight. You saved me from blind trust." The waitress didn't move. Her chin lifted quietly. That's what honesty does. It saves people even when they don't want. Saving? The billionaire's lips curved faintly. Not quite a smile, but close enough. He realized the girl in the apron had given him something rare. Not service, not flattery, but truth. The billionaire pushed back his chair, the legs scraping across the polished floor. Heads turned as the quiet tension in the room grew heavier. He held the stack of receipts in one hand and pointed toward the manager with the other. His voice came out sharp and clear. "Explain this now," the manager stammered, sweat forming on his forehead. "Sir, I can't imagine how this happened." "Maybe a system glitch?" The billionaire's glare cut him off. "Don't lie. She saw what none of you did." He motioned toward the waitress who stood, frozen tray still balanced against her hip. "She risked everything to speak the truth while all of you let me bleed." The staff whispered nervously, some dropping their eyes,
others sneaking glances at the waitress. She shifted uncomfortably unused to being the center of such a storm.
But she didn't look away from him. The billionaire studied her a long moment before saying, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You just saved me millions." Gasps rippled through the hall, but he wasn't finished. He looked back at the waitress, his tone softer but steady. "Tell me why. Why would you risk humiliation or worse to point out something I might have punished you for?" Her reply came without hesitation. "Because it was right. And if telling the truth costs me my job at least, I'll know. I did the right thing." The billionaire's lips pressed into a line, his chest rising heavier than before. Around them, silence returned, thick and expectant. He had built his empire on people who bent for power, but here stood someone who wouldn't, and that truth unsettled him more than the theft ever could. The billionaire turned the receipts over in his hand, then let them fall one by one onto the table like pieces of a broken mask. He stood straighter, his voice carrying across the room, loud enough for every staff member to hear. "You all worked under me, and not one of you noticed. Not one of you spoke up except her." He pointed toward the waitress, his tone heavy with something rare. "Respect." The manager swallowed hard, his excuses dying
On his tongue. The billionaire's eyes darkened. "You let greed slip into my house and you thought I'd never see it. But she did. She saved me when it should have been your job." Then he looked back at the waitress, his expression softening in a way
that unsettled everyone. She spoke truth when silence was safer. That is the kind of loyalty money can't buy. The room buzzed with shock as he reached into his coat, pulling out a card etched with his name and a number. He placed it on her tray beside the empty glasses. "From tonight, you don't serve tables for tips. You work for me directly. You will never again be punished for honesty." Her throat tightened, her fingers hovering above the card like it might vanish. She wanted to speak, but no words came. The billionaire gave her a small nod, almost like a bow of gratitude, then turned sharply toward the stunned staff. "Clean this place of thieves, or I will clean it for you." The guests erupted in whispers, some clapping, others staring, but all knowing. They had just witnessed something rare. A billionaire brought to his knees, not by loss, but by the courage of a single waitress who chose truth over fear. If this story moved you, share it, so others never forget that one selfless act can rewrite a destiny in ways no one sees coming.